What do we celebrate on Purim? Purim is an unusual Yom Tiv, that we're not celebrating an amazing transformation that took place in history that we are trying to connect to in our current lives. On Pesach, we celebrate the transformation from slaves into free people. On Shavuos, we celebrate receiving the Torah that transformed our relationships with Hashem and our ability to become a spiritual nation. On Sukkot, we celebrate the journey between those 2 points that allowed us to be Makabel Torah and ultimately enter Eretz Yisrael. Even on Chanukah, we celebrate overcoming the enemy, but also being able to have the Beis HaMikdash and be able to bring the Karbanos once again. And we saw miracles that showed us that Hashem loved us and wanted us to do that. But on Purim, we started off in Gullus and we ended off in Gullus. And Queen Esther Amalka stayed in the palace and had to be married to Achashverosh Rosha. So what is the celebration? What are we trying to connect to in our current lives? So this past week I had a thought. As we were sitting around the Shabbos table and we were singing Zmiros and saying Divrei Torah and having good conversation and enjoying our family together, I looked over and I saw Simcha Dov trying to daven. As his eyes continue to get weaker, he has even difficulty telling the computer to turn the page, and he needs assistance even in that. And therefore davening took him longer and longer, but he never gave up. He continued to daven well through the Suda and afterwards. And I thought to myself, spiritually, Simcha Dov has us beat. We may have been enjoying the Suda and enjoying the food and each other's company, but his neshama was soaring as he refused to give up and he continued to daven. And then it occurred to me, perhaps that is what's going on Purim. As you see, we are made up of 2 neshamas. We have a nefesh elokis and a nefesh bahamis, according to the Sfarim. However, we identify and align ourselves with our nefesh bahamis. Because if someone were to ask you, who are you? You would probably identify yourself by your name, your profession. Perhaps if you were feeling vulnerable, you would say things that you like to do, your hobby or your personality traits. But all of those things are really our physical components and come from our nefesh bahamis. We have difficulty even recognizing our nefesh elokis. So how do we do that? And where do we see that on Purim? So let me ask you, if you were to think of your time that you had your favorite food, what did that feel like? Now think of a time where you did a tremendous chesed for somebody. You did something that made someone feel very good. You made their day. How did that feel? That's the difference between the nefesh bahamis and the nefesh elokis. When you help somebody, it gives you a feeling inside that is much greater than a physical pleasure. That's your nefesh elokis. And I would suggest that on Purim, that's what took place. As they first enjoyed from the Suda Achas Achashverosh, but when they did tshuva, and they realized that they are much greater than just the physical bodies that they inhabit, they came to an awareness of their nefesh elokis, a connection spiritually that transformed their existence. And we see in the fact that they had a new Kabbalah. Kimu v'kiblu, they were Makabel Torah on a higher level than even that was on Har Sinai. Clearly, they had a spiritual experience that transformed them. And therefore, even though they stayed in Gullus, it was a new Gullus. It was no longer one that was limited and formed by their physical nefesh, but one that was more exalted and had the nefesh elokis, and ultimately led to the building of the second Beis HaMikdash. And where do we see that today? I believe the mitzvahs hayoim are designed to enable us to experience that. For you see, we're supposed to go out and find a poor person, a needy person, and look in their eyes. And if they need food, we should give them mishloach manos. And if they need money, we give them matanos lavyonim. And if they need love and connection and acceptance, then we invite them to our Suda. And we need to see Hashem in our lives. And as we recount the story of the Megillah, we were so clear that Hashgacha Pratis reigned supreme. We need to do the same thing in our lives. And perhaps ask everybody at the Suda to relate to an experience that they had where they saw Hashem in their lives. And as we begin to feel our Nefesh Elokis, as we do those mitzvahs, and we see Hashem in our lives, we can then begin to come to Simcha Dov Ber's toenails. And as we drink, and we lose control of our bodies, and we can't walk, and we can't feed ourselves, we allow the body to settle and allow the Nefesh Elokis to come out. And as we find many times, people do tshuva and they cry over past experiences, and they want to reach out to their friends, and they want to make mekabolos, and they want to do tshuva, because the Nefesh Elokis comes out even as our consciousness become subdued. So I believe the message of Purim is much greater than the famous quote that we are not physical beings having a spiritual experience, but we are spiritual beings having a physical experience. I would say that the message of Purim is even greater, and the message that Simcha Dov Ber teaches us every day is greater, and that is we are godly souls that might be encased in physical bodies, but we have the ability to uplift them and transcend them as we continue on our journey in this world. A Freilich and Purim, and maybe one that brings Yeshuos and Geulos and Refuos to one and all, both Prati and Klali and Klal Yisrael.